Sorry that I'm blending into the background a little too much. What's up, you guys? Welcome to today's video. So I have a very good one for you guys today. In today's video, Adam Clausen is coming back to share how his lawyer got indicted. We're also going to be talking about a few other things, but if this is the first video you are seeing of Adam and you're like, who the heck is Adam? I will leave the first video that I did with him in the description box down below. So definitely go check that out. And please subscribe to Rowan Adam Clausen on YouTube. That is also linked in the description box. They're very dear friends of mine and I'm just so excited to see him free, and I can't wait to see all of the good work that Adam is going to do. I mean, Ro and Adam together are a powerhouse, so I'm just so excited that he's finally home. Today's episode is brought to you by CBD TV. I want to share with you guys this witchcraft. It is a hemp lavender nighttime sleep mask. Listen, it's worth the 5-piece that it cost, okay? Because I wash my face and lay down and put this on at night. It puts me into a coma, okay? Like, it's so relaxing, and you're only supposed to keep it on for 10 minutes, but after the 10 minutes, I'm half asleep. I'm just gonna peel it off and I throw it on my night table like the ratchet queen that I am, and then all of the stuff just absorbs into your skin. You don't have to rewash your face and you can go to sleep. It's freaking magical. I use that in tandem with my Sleepy Vanilla oil. I don't know if y'all know this, but I struggle with insomnia and I have for a very long time. So these two products together have been life-changing for me because I have running thoughts and I just sit there and I'm like, what am I gonna do for tomorrow's video? What's tomorrow's video gonna be? And I just keep going, and my brain is like, for some reason I'm a night owl, so my brain's like cranking out ideas at midnight. This helps me so much. It helps me sleep through the night. So definitely check this out, but I've got a whole bunch of goodies. They have so much more than just sleep stuff. So muscle and joint pain, this is what your 30s look like. Your 30s look like you need some of this because you sleep wrong and it feels like you got hit by a car. So they have all kinds of stuff. And I will leave the website link down below. Use code Jessica at checkout for 15% off if that makes you uncomfortable. Just don't do it, bro. All right, into the video.
My attorney's a whole different story because my attorney was ultimately the guy who helped me through that.
We have stories for days.
He was indicted on this case.
Your attorney was indicted?
Yes. Yes, that's a whole separate story.
It is.
Essentially, I had an attorney who I get called over. They take me out of the holding facility, bring me over to the federal building, and as they're bringing me over, this agent is talking to me, and he's basically like, you know, just throwing jabs about what they know and who's talking and making, you know, just implying different things. And I'm like, it's kind of dawning on me like, man, like they know a lot more than I thought they knew. Clearly, you know, this isn't something that's just gonna go away. Like I'm in pretty deep. Well, they bring me upstairs, put me in this room, handcuff me to a desk, just like you see in the movies, right? Handcuff me to a desk. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, what am I doing here? Where's my attorney at? And I hear him talking. So I'm like, I hear people out there in the hall. Well, the door opens up, here comes the U.S. attorney, here comes all these federal agents, and they come in and they want to go hard on telling me, well, this is what we know, and you know, you got no choice, you're done, you need to talk to us. And I'm like, where's my attorney? They're like, yeah, he'll be here, don't worry about it. I'm like, well, I got nothing to say. They're like, don't worry about it, you can just listen. So they keep talking and talking. I'm like, man. I'm like, all right, where's my attorney, man? Where is this guy? They're like, all right, you grab his attorney, bring him in. Comes right in, I'm like, where have you been the whole time? He's like, listen, man, here's the situation.
I'm being indicted.
He was like, you need to cooperate with these people. I'm like, what part did you miss? I was like, and this is an attorney who was recommended to me by the same attorney who used to come see me in the county jail. This is his cousin. And he had told me, don't worry about it, this guy's gonna take care of you, everything's good.
Oh my God.
And he's telling me, you need to cooperate with these people. This is what they know. This is what they want you to say.
Oh my God.
I'm like, but that's not even true. He said, that doesn't matter. This is what my attorney tells me. It doesn't matter what's true. If you want to get out of this, this is what you have to say. How crazy is that? Now, this is basically openly acknowledging that, you know, people are willing to do whatever they're willing to do to get this conviction, which is insane. You know, you hear about these things, but until I was in that position, I'm like, man, now I'm just mad. I'm mad because this is a guy, my attorney, who I thought was someone that was supposed to be, I could at least trust to fight for me, maybe if I didn't trust him personally entirely. But I realized that, man, everything is lined up against me. I'm in some serious trouble. And I told him, I was like, man, does your cousin know about this? I was like, if, you know, your cousin finds out, he's gonna have an issue with this. He was like, man, don't even worry about him. He's got his own problems. Remember I said he'd wind up indicted? He did. He wound up indicted because the cooperating co-defendants let him know about other things that we had been doing. He had been involved in some of the drug transactions. Got some great stories about that, about rescuing my former attorney out of crack houses. It's real, yep. Well, now his cousin is ready to sell me out to the feds and, you know, basically tell me, hey, there's nothing else I can do for you if you don't cooperate with these people.
This is your lawyer.
Yeah.
This is your freaking lawyer.
Yep.
Did you fire him?
Yeah, that was the end of it. Well, kind of ironic was the fact that we left there to go down for me to be arraigned. We went to the courthouse, and as we're going out of the building, he and the U.S. attorney are talking. They're laughing and joking. They're like, well, you know, sorry I couldn't help you out, and I'll talk to you next week, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, man, like, this is my first experience seeing how the system works and how these backdoor deals are done. And I'm like, man, this can't be real. Like, this isn't how it's supposed to go. And I'm already convinced at this point, I'm going to fight these charges. We're going to go to trial. I'm like, now I know why it's 98% conviction rate, right? So we go out and we go over to the courthouse, and when I walk in, they bring me in, you know, the marshals are there, and obviously I have no attorney. Here's the U.S. attorney, and the judge, you know, looks around, he's like, Mr. Clausen, where's your attorney? I said, he just quit. He said, excuse me? I said, yeah, he quit. You know, I told him, you know, I'm not willing to cooperate, and he said he can't help me anymore. So the judge looks a little perplexed, right? And he looks at the U.S. attorney, he said, you know, you want to comment? He goes, yeah, he quit. I'm like, that's it? They said, yeah, okay. They're like, court clerk, can we get a backup counsel in here to represent Mr. Clausen? And it was literally that easy. They assigned me someone else. They're like, you know what, we'll bring you back on Monday. We'll set you up. We'll have an attorney here. I'm like, no. I'm ready to plead not guilty. We can go forward. Like, I don't need someone else here. No. They want to do this by the book. You're going to have somebody here. And ultimately that's what happened. They brought somebody else in who clearly did not have my best interest. But anyways, went through a number of attorneys. And at that point, I mean, who do you trust? When your attorney has told you that your only option is to cooperate, and you find out that, you know, your former attorney has been indicted by the feds. At that point, it feels like, you know, the whole world is against you, and like everyone is out to get you, and you start feeling pretty paranoid.
Oh my God. I mean, I can't even imagine going through that. You were so brave to see the situation. You were one guy going against the federal government. Everyone is against you. You were by yourself in that. You got 213 years. Just to make people understand why he got that is because of an outdated sentencing structure called 924C. That is no longer a thing. They can no longer stack mandatory minimums like that, but it wasn't made retroactive. So the people that were sentenced under 924C couldn't just get out. So that's why he got out on a compassionate release. They had to find creative ways to get Adam home. So even though everyone acknowledged how we sentenced Adam was complete bullshit, it doesn't mean he can get out. So that would be like saying, you're going to prison for weed, but weed is legal now. And everyone that's in there for weed, it's like, don't you have a weed store down the street in Illinois? It's like, yeah, we have one every 3 miles, but you can't get out of prison. It doesn't make any sense. So when we change laws, especially when it involves crime, if we decide something is legal or we decide that a sentencing structure is not fair, those laws need to be made retroactive so the people that are serving time can get out of prison. So that, in short, is why Adam got 213 years.
Well put. And it's also why one of my co-defendants is still in. He still has the same sentence, 85 years, that he received. And he's not the only one. I mean, there are obviously over the years, you know, the work that we've done for advocating for 924C reform. Although we were excited to get this amendment, you know, it was a long time coming. A lot of people contributed to that. It didn't solve the problem.
Yeah.
There are still so many guys that I left in the facility that I was in that had the same stack sentences that, listen, have more than made amends. They're good men deserving of another opportunity. You know, you can't just, when you give out a sentence like this, you're basically just saying, man, this person's life isn't worth anything.
Yes, exactly.
We're done with you. So, and I think that's why it's been so difficult for people to understand how I ended up with 213 years without killing someone, without something truly drastic. Now, by no means am I trying to minimize my crimes.
Oh, you were guilty. You deserved prison.
100%. Like I said, I not only committed these crimes, I was involved in all sorts of other illegal activity at the time. You know, did any of that warrant a life sentence? My personal opinion is no. And I've been in prison, I've been incarcerated, I've had cellies, you know, who have killed many, many people. And I've lived with these men and had an opportunity to spend time, get a better understanding of, you know, their situation, their personal, their criminal history. And I was always startled by the fact I'm like, man, I'm doing the same time as this guy, but clearly, like, you know, anytime there's a loss of life, you can't bring that person back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's truly tragic, you know, especially for the victims. Making sure that, you know, or attempting to make amends for those crimes is a little bit more difficult. You know, I spent over 20 years actively seeking to try and balance out, not necessarily the scales of justice, but like the karmic scales. Like, man, I did a lot of bad stuff in my past. And I know that I hurt a lot of people. I hurt a lot of people directly with the things that I did. But then to come to the realization of, man, how many other people were impacted? My family, my future, my wife, the families of everybody else that was associated with this. Like, there's collateral consequences that are far reaching. You know, it's like the ripples when you throw a stone in the water and they just spread out. And you really don't know where that ends. And that's a negative influence. So much of what I've sought to do over the last 20 years, and really in recent years, in the last 10, by the contributions that I was able to make on the inside, was to do something to counter that, to create, you know, a different kind of ripple, something positive that would hopefully spread and impact others, and especially their families. And that's how, you know, Ro and I really got into, you know, advocating for services, not only for those on the inside, guys transitioning home, but for the families, making sure that everybody has what they need to successfully, you know, get back into a life that's, you know, meaningful, fulfilling, but you got to have all your base needs satisfied. And so many of us just don't have what we need, you know, and don't get that chance to start fresh. And that's why we get caught up in the cycle. You know, when I came out as a kid, 18 to 21, like, I didn't have what I needed. I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't have the support, and that's why I fell right back in, you know, to what I was doing prior, and I got even deeper into the criminal stuff. And, you know, that's what put me in federal prison with a life sentence. But it's also what strengthened my resolve to make sure that I do everything I possibly can so that someone else doesn't end up in that same situation. Because it's not enough to say, well, I didn't know about these laws. You know, evidence of that. I had no idea that I was facing a life sentence. And honestly, I might not have given up so easily, you know, when they did take me into custody. If I would have known that that was it, that was the end, it might have gone down a little differently. You know, I don't like to think about that, but that's a reality. Like, that's my mindset at the time. I was a kid. I couldn't imagine spending the rest of my life in prison.
So, Ride or Die crew, I know this is super unprofessional of us to pop in here like this, but I had to bring Adam back just for a little bit because we kind of glossed over the tea of him rescuing his attorney out of crack houses, and I can't let y'all down like that. We need the details. So, Adam, welcome back. Please share with us what on earth was going on with your attorney.
Well, you know, like all great criminal attorneys, this guy was a friend of mine, and you know, I met him kind of out and about in the scene, so I knew that he was in the mix of things, and he was representing a number of different drug dealers at the time. So I figured this would be a good guy to keep around just in case. And over time, you know, he became more and more valuable, always had good information for me. So I appreciated that. And I didn't know what the cost was going to be. And I'm not talking about the financial cost. You know, this guy would pop up at the most inopportune times when he was out on a run, on a crack binge, and he'd be looking for drugs. But it got really bad when his people started calling me to go get him. And ultimately, that's what happened. I hadn't talked to him in maybe a couple of weeks and was kind of wondering what was going on. So I called the office and I spoke to his secretary. And I could tell by the sound of her voice, she was a little concerned. She was more than a little concerned. She was deeply concerned that this guy might not be coming back from this one. So I took it upon myself to go and track him down. I ultimately catch up with him in North Philly, which, you know, anybody who's listening, if you know anything, North Philly hasn't changed much in the last 30, 40 years. You know, it's always been a drug spot. And this guy just, you know, that's where he wanted to be. He wanted to be right in the mix of things. So when I finally catch up with him, it's like late afternoon, kids are getting out of school, and it's chaos down there. And I walk down, midway down the block, there's a bouncer sitting outside. Middle of the day, it's sunny out, right? This 350-pound dude is sitting out on a little tiny bar stool, you know, making sure none of the wrong people get in. And I remember standing at the doorway trying to peer inside, and I'd gotten word that this is where he was. And I'm looking in, I'm like, oh man, I can't even see. It's pitch black in there. I make my way in and I find him, you know, in the back with a number of the girls that are working there. And yeah, he's been on a 6-7 day crack run, whatever it is, and does not want to leave. And obviously the girls don't want him to leave, you know, but at this point, I don't know if he's got any money left. I don't, you know, he's doing bad. He looks bad. He smells bad. And, you know, I figured it was time to get him out of there. And part of that was obviously self-serving at the time. But, you know, when I heard his secretary's voice on the phone, I could tell, you know, there's other people that were counting on this guy. So, you know, it wasn't the last time, but that's the one that most stands out in my mind. Now, trying to get him out of there. Remember the guy at the door? You know, as much as, you know, he was kind of reluctant to let me in and come get this guy, he sure didn't want to let me leave because the girls didn't want him to leave. So there were some people that, you know, needed to be persuaded. You know, some of that was a little bit of money. Some of it was, you know, a bit more forceful. But eventually I get this guy out the door. And by the time he sees the light of day, you can tell, you know, he hasn't been outside in a while. And we make it out into the street, and being out there in the light of day when you haven't been outside, when you've been partying for a while, maybe it was, partially a sobering experience for him, but it didn't take him long to kind of snap out of it. And, we got him out of there. I don't even remember where I took him, where I dropped him off, who I passed him off to. But, within a couple of days, couple of weeks, he was back into his normal routine. But this was a pattern that, repeated itself over time. And I should have known better, that this would be something that people would use, to kind of gain control of him over time, which the federal government ultimately did. And as I was looking through some of these court documents yesterday, trying to find out all what happened to him, he was eventually criminally convicted, disbarred, which is no surprise, when you're an attorney that's, hanging out in crack houses and bars. And it was always an adventure. And ultimately, when it came down to it, and when we were arrested on this, the main guy who started cooperating called him right away to try and get him on retainer. And what happened was, he went down there and began representing him and was trying to protect myself and a couple other people that were involved. But this guy ended up wearing a wire on him. So he wore a wire on his own attorney, which I believe is ultimately what led to him being criminally convicted, disbarred. I have no idea what's happening with him now. But he's not the only attorney that represented me who wound up going to prison and being disbarred.
Listen, how do you find these people? I know addiction comes in all forms. You can be a functioning addict, but I've never in my life met attorneys that were like me, were street and were, addicts. So you said his cousin represented you after he left. So was it him or was it another attorney that was in the same mix?
He was one of them. Like I said, there were a number of them. I mean, they were all they were all running in the same circle. Some were able to manage it, some didn't. Some went to prison. Some went on to run for political office or aspire to run for political office. Yeah. So it's interesting to see how things have worked out. Meanwhile, I spent 20 years in prison, and seems like I got the short end of this one, right?
I mean, a little bit. So I also wanted to ask you while I have you here, the Asian massage parlors that you were robbing, it seems as though in your first interview, we kind of skated over that too, but in my opinion, and please jump in if I'm wrong, it seems as though the federal government kind of gave prostitution rings and all these other things a pass while they prosecuted you. Is that how you felt at the time? Like that they were protecting human trafficking and protecting these rings of prostitution?
Oh no, most definitely they were. I mean, it was well known at the time. The federal government conceded during my case. They're like, yeah, we know that these are illegal brothels. We know that there's all sorts of illegal activity that goes on here. They're like, but that's not the point. We don't want to focus on that right now. So again, as I said, being in that place at that time where I was arrested was just 2 blocks from City Hall. The establishment was known to be frequented by local officials, city officials. So, it's strange that the federal government chose to handle it the way that they did, but obviously they had leverage over whether it was the city officials, the people who are running these brothels, Asian organized crime. It was a confluence of so many different people and things, and they had their own agenda. And honestly, that's all they were worried about at the time, which, is evidenced by the outcomes.
It's just so heartbreaking to me because there's so many victims involved in human trafficking.
Yep.
And, who knows what happened to them? And to think that the government knew about it and did nothing, they were more involved in prosecuting somebody that robbed those businesses, that's gut-wrenching, because how often does this happen? I'm sure your case is not an isolated incident. So at what level are we talking if this is happening all across the country? You know, so to think about that, it's absolutely terrifying how often it goes unnoticed, or not unnoticed, completely ignored.
Well, there was a time, uh, as I think I explained in our previous conversation, where, in my immature mind, I rationalized that these were all people involved in illegal activity. You know what I mean? If you're in the game, you know what's going on. Like, you don't get a pass, there's no excuses. However, I didn't understand how these places operated, the people that were being victimized. So basically, I victimized them a second time, myself and my co-defendants, by what we were doing. They were already being subjected to something that they wanted no part of. I didn't understand that. It wasn't until I had been in prison a number of years, and I watched, it was something on maybe a Dateline or one of those shows where they started showing and really highlighting human trafficking and the effects of it, and all the people who were involved. And I started viewing my own crimes in a whole different light, and being more empathetic at that stage of my life. I felt even deeper regret for the things that I did, especially because of those people, because of those who were already being victimized. So yeah, it gave me a whole new perspective on the situation. And that's something that, as I've grown, as I've matured, again, I carry a weight of regret, and it's part of what's driven me to do everything that I've done since, to make amends, to balance out those scales.
Know that you've helped tons of people in prison. Your story is going to continue to help people now that you're home. And, I just want to say before we go, I called them last night because I'm like, bro, we need more details for all of this, for the Ride or Die crew. He's like, whatever you need to make the video make sense. And that passion for sharing your story, that genuineness and that willing to help is in everything that you do. And I just can't wait to see, again, all of the lives that you're going to change. You and Ro together. You guys are like the true definition of a power couple.
Well, we love you. We appreciate you having us on. And obviously, I'm happy to come back anytime you'd like and answer whatever other questions you have. We're just starting our journey and really taking the time to enjoy every moment of it. So we appreciate you.
Anything that you want to know about Ro and Adam is on their channel. They do daily updates and live streams. They're going to be filming even more videos now about Adam's story, and they're really going to dig deeper into his life before and after prison. So be sure to follow them for all of those stories, because I promise you, what you're seeing on my channel is a tenth of what they have to offer. So I love you guys. Thank you again for tuning in. Stay safe, stay sober, don't rob people, and I'll see you in my next one.